First time I met Pat Daniels was right after I moved. That was in June of 2010. And I wanted to make a visit to her home. I don't really remember the reason, but it wasn't long in our conversation that I realized this woman has a pretty strong faith.
I became pastor of our church at the age of 33. And when you're that young, a lot of times you're everyone's kid. And Pat Daniels really was someone that would really respect me as her pastor. And I was pretty blown away with that. I didn't really know her well when I became pastor. And as she just began to come to me with counsel, to talk to me about things, I realized that she had faith in the position of a pastor because it was from God. That was really the first I noticed the strong faith of Pat, but boy, I tell you, it just evidenced itself so many more times.
One story that jumps out to me is Miss Pat's always been faithful and always been here at the church. And it was neat as I got here just seeing Miss Pat interact throughout her health. For a long time, I had never met Miss Pat. She would just be here occasionally, and then to know that she was such a faithful member just through everything she went through. As we've looked at the verse, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, I remember back to a car ride. Miss Pat needed to get her car, and I was asked to drive her to the garage. And we started driving to the garage, and as I talked to her, she was having a great day, and she'd had a great week, and everything was just so good and positive, and she was so chipper. And then she started to explain how she was having this problem with her vision, and this problem with cancer, and this problem with her health. And I was just blown away at her positive week that for us was filled with so many negatives, until I realized to Miss Pat, it was her faith. The reason things were so good was her faith. It was the substance. She was hoping for healing from cancer. She had not seen any improvement in her eyes and in cancer, but her faith was believing that it was going to happen, and she was literally sitting in my car, operating from a place of happiness and healing, although she had not gotten it.
She used terms like, praise the Lord, or the Lord's always meeting my needs. Never a negative comment. I remember a couple of times she visited our services and she had a mask on. And since I'm a cancer survivor myself, I knew that she was probably taking chemotherapy. A detached retina, which required her to keep a certain body posture, whether she was sleeping or standing, no matter what. In all of this trial and tribulation, she's taking care of a mother who is in a wheelchair and needs care 24/7. In all of this, she never failed to come to church and drop off her tithe and her mother's tithe.
I remember when she came in one day and said, hey, Pastor Bob, will you anoint me with oil? And she came in and said, listen, will you all pray over me and ask God to heal me of this cancer? And she was already in a position of, she knew she was going to be healed. And there was no evidence of that. And we know that sometimes God doesn't work that way. But to Miss Pat, it was God's going to take care of me. She was praying from a position of faith. She was asking from a position of faith. And as we think of the verse, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, being able to operate from a place of not seeing the result, but trusting that God's going to take care of you and deliver it, has just blown me away time and time again with Miss Pat.
Her faith was so strong. Pat would be battling her own battle with cancer and yet caregiving for her mother and praying for her extended family, and somehow able to keep in contact with what's going on at the church and to let me know that she'd been praying for me. And boy, I tell you, when I think of Pat, I just think of faithful prayer warrior, strong faith, godly lady.
Wow, what a great faith.